Blessings and much love to every one of you. Hoping that you're all enjoying life in the best possible way, dealing with all the challenges and difficulties as life moves forward. And we are the ones who are responsible to adjust ourselves and bring ourselves to the flow of things. The topic of flow has been discussed in the last several weeks. Today we're discussing sexual flow. And it's really important to understand that sexual flow is actually a trance state, is a state of happiness, joy, a place that we are not dealing with our ego and we're bypassing all of our thoughts. It's being in a zone in a different way in our physical and in our emotional, psychological, spiritual way. So you see how deep of a concept it is to be in that sexual flow. But what it means, what does it really mean, a sexual flow? Well, it's a rhythmic timing of a certain function of our body, which is a release of hormones that we are enjoying as of the release and in the interaction. And this feeling of elation or trance is only at a climax or at the point that this is built, this is prompt up to that. How we get to that is also a very important question. I see a lot of couples who, the first question I ask from them is about their sex lives and how they're dealing with each other as far as the intimacy is concerned. Most of the time, it's really important to understand from them how sex life has been for them earlier on, how it's changed through the course of the relationship, and where it is now. And you can see often enough that there are different stages of life and different requirements in each one of these experiences that affects their intimacy or their sexual desire or even willingness to be partners. And also when I interview the individuals, one of the main questions that I ask is about their sex life, is how active they are. Are they masturbating more often or having intercourse? All of these are important questions because each one of them deals with a certain flow of this feeling of being one with universe and with everything that we experience in life. Everything affects everything in reality. So imagine how the sexual flow is affected by our own personal tensions, stresses, difficulties in life, financial situations, medication, anxiety, depression, guilt feelings, shame. There's so many different aspects of our day-to-day life that for those reasons, we get off of that flow, which is that sexual flow of elation and trance. How often we get to that stage? I don't know. So for some people, that's a little bit more often. For some people, it may be a few times in a lifetime. For each person, it's different. But the fact is that to be in that zone, in that flow, it's different than just being sexually active and just having an intercourse or pleasure yourself and get to that climax by itself. It's more than that. It's after that release that is really that feeling of being one with the universe is experienced. So there are 4 stages into a sexual flow or that algorithm of copulation. The first stage of it is desire. So if before anything happens, there must be a feeling, it's a mental state. There's an attachment or attraction to a figure, to someone that, it's exciting us or make us feel good. So in that stage, there is not much of a physical interaction. However, in the second stage, which is the arousal, this is where physiologically the blood flow now gets involved in this flow, and then the organs are getting filled with bloodstream, and then from there on is where the excitement increases to a physical sensation. And then the next part after that is the part about orgasm, and that orgasm is when the feelings are at the top of their height and they're feeling really high, and that is a point that some people easily reach and some people cannot reach. And After orgasm is where we have a climax, and that climax is really that high point that we're looking for in that elated state or trance. So the four different parts, they need to come together and be one together in order to have a full experience. One without the other one doesn't complete the flow of things. But this flow, as we said, could be disrupted, misdirected in so many different ways, because from every angle that we look at this intimacy issue or sexual issue, there are some factors affecting us. It's the time of the day, or the light, or the weather, or the confusion or the conflict we had with our sex partner. So many different things can make this a sensitive subject. And this sensitivity is often a reaction from our body and from our mind into the situation. And interestingly enough, for men and women, these are all different. Men have more of a physical understanding of sex, and for them, it's just a biological way, or mostly, we cannot say completely, but it's mostly a biological way of dealing with at least the beginning of the sex. However, for women, it's a lot more complicated. It involves a lot of emotions. It involves the psychological factors much more than it does for a man. The man's psychological issues are generally about the conflicts that they have, the stresses that they have, the misdirections that they get from that point. But for women, it's the feeling of being accepted, honored, taken care of. It's a feeling of being heard, being understood, being cared for more than anything else. Often enough, we miss that, as men. And for women, when they are missing that action from a man, then the sex changes its form completely, and then that trance state is not going to be achieved. I often hear, unfortunately, from men that saying, sorry to say that, it's like I'm having sex with the corpse. Why? It's because they don't understand that this woman is not really willing to have sex with you. It's because they're not connecting with you. They're not really seeing eye to eye with you where you are. And then for them, it's just not any interaction. There is not any parts of that desire to start with, and then to get to any other part of it to climax. So that wouldn't happen. And then from women, what I hear is that men are not interested. My husband or my boyfriend is not showing enough attention. Well, most of the time after we go through all of these, we figure out that there are a lot of tension in this man's life, either they're work related, or about responsibilities, or about certain distractions that they have through this part of the intercourse, which is being attracted. The mind goes off, and that's where the shut off is for the man. So then connecting these two people, the man and the woman, at a certain time, with a certain timing, with a certain relaxation, is really important. Interestingly enough, the creation of the world is almost a sexual interaction. A meteor has hit Earth, and from that intercourse of the meteor with Earth, we are born. We're the children of this copulation. And in the same way, everything else is copulating, is making that sexual interaction. Just like the combustion engine. When the engine pistons are just going back and forth, the energy that is created in this piston is actually the energy that we are talking about in that full flow of the climax. Is that combustion that happens. That's eruption, almost like a volcano, that there are so many shakers, it's shaking, and then eventually there is an eruption. So in this intimacy, or in this sexual context, the feelings of stimulation are important. So the physical stimulation of the genitals, it's almost like being on a swing. It's just the back and forth feeling of excitement, understanding that there is something happening that is making your heart pound, and also makes your mind a little bit more distracted from what's going on. So it's actually a good sex is a heart and mind interaction. Your heart has to be in it from your feelings and from your emotions, and your mind has to be in it from the point of view of not being connected to the logics, to what's going around. So actually your mind needs just to be focused on the interaction of the sexual intimacy and nowhere else. So when these two come together, your mind and heart are one, and they're palpitating together, these two energies become one and become that energy of trance, or that climax that we're talking about. Now, we said that there are so many problems. Let's discuss some of these problems. When somebody is feeling guilty about having sex, so imagine how that is affecting the outcome of this intimacy. Or if you are feeling anxious and worried, for the man, for example, the performance anxiety sometimes becomes an issue. We have discussed in our previous programs about the sexual dysfunctions, and also about the hyperactivity of the sex in men and women. So those are issues that preoccupy the mind and bring us to a point of halt, stuckness, and that's where the flow is stopped. As you have heard from me in all of our programs about flow, and if you remember, this time we're just talking about the physical part of the flow, and sex is the fourth part of the foundation of the physicality that we're talking about. In our last program, if you haven't seen it yet, please go to the archives of togethernessmedia.com under flow, and you can see that we discussed three different functions, which is the fitness or physicality of the body, sleep, and food, eating. These are three principles, and the last one, which was sex, and we're discussing today, these are the foundations of how a happy, healthy life could be built. So you can see that in marriages, sex is about 40% of the relationship, and in a personal life it has a huge importance according to the person. Can we just miss what's happening to it? We can't. So let's pay attention more to what stops us, what gets on the way of this intimacy or getting to this feeling that is our gift. Remember, we're talking about the magic of flow. This flow is not yours, is not mine. This flow is universal. It's that unique energy that runs through everything, and once we connect with it, then we can ride the waves of it in a way that we are happy, healthy, and successful. In the sexual flow of things, we need to pay attention to our physicality, of how these sex organs are functioning. If there is any low or high functioning, we need to pay attention to that. If there is anxiety, that this anxiety stops you from being more intimate, from wanting to have sex, think about that. See how you can deal with that. Depression is another issue. When you feel depressed, you don't have any arousal. You're not going to be able to perform. So depression is another factor. What about talking about shame? If you have been shamed about sex in some cultures, and that's another aspect that we need to be discussing. Some cultures, they see sex as a bad thing or as negative. It's a taboo. We have so many different cultural misunderstandings or understandings about sex, and those are affecting us. Now imagine if there is interracial, intercultural relationships that they have different ideology of this sex or sexuality, then you can see how the confusion is going to be affecting the climax. And sometimes this climax could be so intense that could be frightening. Sometimes the body could be so sensitive, and the toleration of this elation or this trance may not be really agreeable with someone, and those could be the times that the over stimulation is giving us a problem. When the neurons in the genitals are firing together, when they're all connected with each other and they're at their most or best optimal state of arousal, this is where everything begins, and that's where we can get more active and then go through the process from both sides. Now, as we've always been discussing these concepts. The sexual response is really important to our body, because for men and women both, when there is a lack of sex, the brain can get foggy, unstimulated, and dull, and the body could become more agitated and sensitive. So we can see from every angle that we look at the subject of sex, there is such a huge importance on understanding it, accepting it, loving it, caring for it, spending time for it, making sure that you create time for sex. I hear from some couples, we don't have time, our kids are in the room, our work doesn't allow us, I have to leave very early in the morning, I come home late, when I go to bed my husband is watching TV, when the husband is coming to bed the wife is sleeping. So there's always enough reasons for sex not to happen, or at least not happen even in a fully experiential of its flow. So we need to pay attention. We need to take care of the stagnation and the stuck positions that disturbs the flow of things and goes through our lives. In Balancing the Wheel, we have dedicated a chapter of the book to all of these issues, especially about the biological and the hormonal ways that sexual intimacy affects a wife and a husband, or a man and a woman, and how when this disconnection happens, when one feels unloved, uncared for, the whole cycle goes off and nothing happens. I invite you to either take a look at the book or listen to it on audiobooks.com, because it's important to practice being with yourself in a state of mind of willingness to let go of the past experiences, the traumas, the information or misinformation that we've been keeping, and then build a new direction, communication with ourselves and our partners in order to facilitate a healthier and happier sex life. In Balancing the Wheel, again, if you look at the 8 components of this balance, which is, again, balance is another way that we can discuss flow. If we are not in balance, that flow is not going to be possible, because once we deal with all of the 8 spokes of the wheel, from the physical all the way to mental, emotional, relational, recreational, environmental, spiritual, and financial, all of these are affecting our sex life. Okay, everything is affecting it. So we need to go through every one of these steps. As I have promised you, in every program we're going through one of these elements, one of these 8. We are just finalizing today with the first one, which is the physical, and in our next episode we'll be talking about the mental flow of things. If you have any questions, concerns about any of these topics, you know where to find me, wheelofwellbeing.com. You can contact me personally, and I'll be glad to respond to your questions. Always, there are so many questions about intimacy and sex, and although I'm not a medical doctor, based upon my experiences and the cases that I've studied, I can be of support. And if there are any physical issues, I can definitely refer you to a physician for that, and that's where you need to go if the issues are physical. But I really invite you to take a look at the mental issues and the emotional issues of sex, because those are the underlying of the physical symptoms. Many times after you go to a doctor and the physical parts, they all look good, your testosterone level or estrogen is adequate enough, there are a lot of different ideological disturbances that are getting on the way, and that needs help. I wish you a lot of patience in that regard, because it requires patience. You cannot rush it. If sex is not happening the way that you want from the beginning, don't give up. Okay, stay interested, stay working on it together with your partner, and eventually you see that there is some developments are happening and help is there. Looking forward to speaking with you in our next program. Thank you so much, and God bless you. raise your vibration and re-engage with life. Find balance and reconnect with joy. Your vehicle is balancing the wheel, and we're here to support you in becoming more happier, healthier, and successful. wheelofwellbeing.com or drsadigh.com.
Do you have viruses or malware warnings? Have a problem with your computer and need help? 24 hours, 7 days. Computer Emergency Services. Convenience and savings at your fingertips. Download our free app and keep in touch.
At Hello Hollywood, we bring you the best in entertainment, fashion, movies, hit music, gossip, and live from the red carpet reporting. Hello Hollywood is your new choice.